What is going on? We are here for another episode of the Julius Files. This week, this episode, this is a Q and JP, a question and the Julius perspective, and I feel the need to continue to emphasize this, that it's my perspective, that I'm not giving you answers, I'm just giving you my perspective, because I'm big on accountability, which means I think that you need to find your own answers so that when you get an answer, it's your own. And whatever you do with it, it's something that you have to own. You own your own decisions. Thereby, you should find your own answers, and you should search out other people's information and perspective, maybe people that have got a little bit of a time where you know that it's a legitimate perspective. And I think that after 17 years in business and a full 20 years in leadership, I enjoy putting my perspective out there. And
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, see, I'm never.
He does.
Yeah, I'm not. Okay, obviously you can see I got my co-host here. I've got the Rebecca.
Don't forget about me.
Yeah, and Mr. Bradshaw, Master Blaster Matt Bradshaw.
Wouldn't miss an episode.
Okay, there we go. So, and I mean, towards that end of it, yeah, Matt will be involved in quite a bit of episodes because right now Matt's the one that's actually handling the production. But okay, so I before we get to this Q and JP, I will say that I was looking forward to this episode because I got a format change, not necessarily a format change, but a format addition. So I'm going to let Rebecca and Matt ask me some questions so that we can get that perspective, but I'm saving it for the end. That's why we're not having a third question, because I have a small announcement for a format addition and maybe a little bit of a teaser as we go forward of. Like I said in the original pilot, what is the Julius Files? Well, it can be whatever the hell I want it to be because it's my podcast. So, any which way, at the end of it, we will we'll get to it. But I'm gonna save that for the very end. But getting right to it, Miss Rebecca, I am ready for your question. I think I'm ready for your question.
What if I'm not ready for it?
Okay, well, that's.
All right, I got one.
You got to scoot up. You got to scoot up. Yeah, exactly. We got it. We got to hear your voice.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there we go.
All right, so Mr. Julius, that sounds funny coming from me.
You didn't get that. You didn't even say Julius. It wasn't proper enunciation. It was Julius.
I'll just call you Jason, okay? Or JR, I don't know.
Oh, man, here we go.
Nickname.
The JR and Julius Caesar and JJ, and I heard it all as a kid, and yeah, that's...
Orange Julius.
Yes, I heard Orange Julius a lot, because back then, they were legit in the malls, and they were still an actual known popular thing. And then back then, I really didn't give a shit about orange juice. Now I love orange juice, but I mean, hey, that's a whole nother topic for another day.
Probably a lot of sugar in those.
That's what I said, and I don't want nothing to. I don't stay away from the sugar. I mean,
sugarless man.
Yes, exactly. My mom. Hey, man, I'm telling you, but as a kid, it was sugarless gum, and it was carob. Carob is a sugar or I don't know if it's sugarless, but it's an alternative to chocolate. And it's not bad, as I remember. It's a little chalkier than chocolate, but that was the thing.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
I know, but the thing my entire family was huge about chocolate, and here I am, the only kid that I'm like, man, I don't care for chocolate. I can take it or leave it. Every once in a while, I'll nibble on it a little bit, but it's not. No, I'll take a salad bar over a candy bar any day of the week. I'm blessed like that I actually enjoy the rabbit food. So, okay, let's get to Rebecca's question.
I'll take your chocolate.
There we go. That's you can have my portion. Yes.
So, what do you do to maintain discipline when motivation is running thin for you or your employees?
Wow, and that's it's funny that I put a little bit of thought into that here lately, and And I know, because the funny thing is Matt was like, I don't got my question. What's your question? And she was like, well, I don't want to tell you my question because then it's set up for him. So I swear it's been something that I've legit been thinking about here lately. But again, that's where I go back to I know that certain things come easy to certain people and certain things come hard to certain people. Discipline has always come pretty easy to me. Getting into a regimen and getting into habits, like I consciously recognize habits that I will get into. And then I got to a point through my reading that I was consciously recognizing bad habits that I was into and seeing you have X allotted amount of time. So if a bad habit is taking up time, you can't just put good habits in there. That the whole point is that you need to stack good habits, and in order to make sure that you're leaving time to do everything else, you actually have to get rid of a bad habit as you are installing a good habit. So on the last several years, I have been consciously, actively getting rid of the bad habits and stacking the good habits. I can honestly say at this point that when it comes to bad habits, like I think I've got one bad habit left, and the cigarettes. I mean, the smoking. It's obviously everybody knows. I think at this point, it's a bad habit. Everybody's got a monkey on their back of some or other, but I can take it or leave it when it comes to alcohol. I really don't eat junk food, and that's where I'm like, I'm grateful that I am blessed in that way, that a lot of those things have come natural because I prefer them. But I have understood, and I told this to a friend of mine. It was in a master class, and I was like, you want to know the secret about success? And everybody kind of popped up, and I was like, it's boring. And they're, okay, well, when you're developing something, like that's fun, that's exciting, you're testing, you're also struggling because you're spending money, but you're not getting money in, you're testing. But once you find a successful recipe, it gets boring, because the whole point of going into business is to build and grow a business, is to run a profitable operation. And when you find a recipe for success, you duplicate it, and you duplicate it, and you duplicate it. Well, when you're in business for so many years and you've duplicated it so many times, the enthralling adrenaline rush that comes, like it's not. I can do it with my eyes closed. There are most aspects of running a coffee shop and a pizza place under one roof. It was fun and a roller coaster figuring out how to build a coffee shop. And it was fun and it was a roller coaster figuring out how to run and build a pizza place. Again, fun and a roller coaster to figure out how to integrate them under one roof and make it a dual brand under one roof concept. Once that was mastered and the systems were written and we executed to a successful business, I can now do this with my eyes closed and one hand tied behind my back. And it's boring, but it works.
But aren't there always improvements to be made? Always something to be looking at and changing and
evolving
all of that
look,
stuff.
You're exactly right. That is systems and systems development. And part of systems development is that you look at all the systems that you've written and you find the bottleneck. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. So you go tear down that system and you rebuild it to make a drastic improvement. And then it's going to expose the next bottleneck. So you move on to the next. You tear that one down and you rebuild it better. And the system of that is to always be tearing down and rebuilding your systems by, as you fix a bottleneck, it then exposes a new bottleneck. As you fix that, it ends up exposing a new. So once you are in that process and you have a team built and you know what you're doing, well, again, then that becomes boring. You're making an improvement. You're running a business to run a respectable business, to make improvement. But once the system is in place, once you by and large have the process mastered, it's not fun and exciting. It's boring, but it's also successful. And you can look back and I'm like, all the pain that roller coaster, okay, those are ebbs and flows, and there's a whole lot of pain, very, very deep-seated in my mind that I went through all of that, where in that respect, I'm like, you know what? I'll take a little bit of boring, because the boring means there's more money in the bank this month than there was last month, and I went through the first 10 years of that not always being the case. So in that respect, I'm like, I'm not mad about having a little bit of boring. It's success. There's more money in the bank this month than there was last month. But circling back around to the discipline side of it, I realized that to be successful, you have to be regimented. You have to have habits. You have to have good habits, and you have to stick with them. It's like part of why I work 7 days a week. I get up and I go through my regimen and my pattern and my habits every day the same way. And why? Because I'm afraid of breaking those habits, because those habits have served me well. That's discipline. The discipline of getting up and repeating a process that you know works. Don't do anything to screw up the process that you know works. You work at putting a good process in place. You work at putting good habits in place. It's the determination and the discipline that gets you there. And once you have a recipe that works, yeah, it's a little bit boring, but then we come back to everybody says, well, I have a problem. I can't have fun. Well, shit. My morning regimen is that I get up, and obviously as my coffee is brewing as I'm using the bathroom, and I am honestly personally getting excited to set down one, because I mean, you always look forward to that first sip, that first sip, that first cup of coffee in the morning. I mean, like, who doesn't look forward?
That's what you're getting excited about?
No, I'm getting excited about the book that I'm about to open, because I know that I've built a good habit that I start my day by feeding my brain. My first 2 to 3 hours of my morning is learning. I love that shit. Like, that is a great habit. I don't even know exactly because there's a couple years ago where or how I started it, but I'm sure if I think back, it was like one morning I did it, and then for whatever reason it worked for me, so the next morning I did it. And then I was like, then I noticed a pattern. Hey, I'm reading and I'm drinking 3 cups of coffee. Well, let's call that what it is. Now that is my pattern. 3 cups of coffee, and I read while I'm drinking, and generally I'm reading probably somewhere 7 to 10 pages per cup. So I'm reading 20 to 30 pages for my 3 cups of coffee every morning. Like when I started in on the 75 hard, and one of the things was you got to read at least 10 pages a day. I'm like, shit, I'm blowing that out of the water already. I mean, because I happily, eagerly build time into my day in the morning to read 20 to 30 pages as I'm drinking my 3 cups of coffee. And you know what? I am happy. That is joyful to me, because I am learning and I am growing. And we've looked at this where, like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm self-made. I'm not self-made. It took all of you to help me, but what I am is an autodidact. I am self-taught, because I was a dumb high school dropout that didn't want nothing to do with education. And somewhere along the line, I got a desire for information because I had an interest in the stock market, and it led to picking up a book because I didn't have the money to go searching for high society type information or expensive information. Well, where's the cheapest information out there? Well, at that age, the internet did not exist. I mean, so it was always books.
Oh, you're not that old.
I mean, well, let's go 47, and I'm sitting there going, I hired into Chrysler in 1994. And by 94, 95 was when I had really developed an interest in the stock market.
We had AOL back then.
You did yeah. No, I'm sorry. That was not. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I want exactly. And I was always kind of, I mean, a little bit behind the curve on embracing the technology, right down to the phones. I mean, I fought it hard. Like, my razor finally had to just go shit before I finally said, okay, I'm going to try a smartphone. And I fought going to the razor because I love my little Motorola clamshell. But the point being, Yeah.
You don't mess the two-handers.
No, my God, that's exactly that big.
Like this?
So in my change is inevitable, there are certain things, certain habits that do not have to change. And I have been always pretty disciplined about it. Ain't no different than, I've always been a good hard worker. It was always second shift work. And I would fuck off in my fuck off time, but it was always a get up, take your ass to work, go to work, get off work. Well, then go fuck off and then go to bed. But got to be up by this time to get up and go to work. I've always been a good worker. I've always had a pretty good discipline about work and about providing for myself. But over the years, I have stacked good habits and it's come naturally. And that's my thing about entrepreneurship, where I'm like, if you have to go be motivated by somebody else, you probably should not be an entrepreneur. If you don't have an internal drive and self-motivation, you probably should just be an employee. And I'm just being honest. If you cannot find your own discipline, if you cannot stack and build on your own habits, well, you're going to live a lower quality of life in general, but you should definitely stay away from entrepreneurship, because if you're not building, if you don't have that discipline, if you don't have those good habits, you're competing with people like me. And I'm not special. I'm looking at the other guys out there that I esteem to be, and they have the same habits and they have the same disciplines and they have the same thirst for knowledge, and they have the same desire to seek out information and grow themselves without having to be forced. They have the same internal motor that pushes them. They don't need motivation from outside sources. They seek information from outside sources, but they don't need to seek motivation from outside sources. So think about that. If you're going to go into entrepreneurship, those are probably some key things that should come naturally to you, because entrepreneurship is capitalism and it's competition. And when you throw your hat in the ring, you would better be at least on par with those natural things of that internal drive and that ability to be disciplined and determined without needing outside influence. Because if you're not, you're already at a disadvantage, because you are competing with people like me and people that are way better and even more disciplined than me. So how do I deal with it? Again, that's where I do. I'm blessed where I say it comes naturally. But you guys give me shit about the ADD, ADHD, whatever the hell it is you want to diagnose me with. But the point is, it makes me who I am. And part of who I am, I'm happy that I have that internal drive and that motor. Sometimes it gives me insomnia because I got a hard time shutting my brain off. But I would rather struggle to shut my brain off than struggle to turn it on. I would rather it give me anxiety from sitting in a chair and not moving too long than it give me anxiety having to get up and work. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm blessed. The Hypomanic Edge. And that was a great book, because what that book is saying is that a lot of the great leaders of our past times that built America, they would have been diagnosed with that ADD, ADHD, OCD, blah, 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 blah. You can look at it as a disability, or you can look at it and realize it allows you to focus heavily in certain areas where other people have a hard time. It allows you to jump from issue to issue to issue where other people, that totally drives them nuts. All of those things are they can be strengths if you harness them and use them as strengths and you're comfortable with yourself. Because I'm laughing about it, and I know that you guys joke with me about it, but if somebody looked at me about it as if they were trying to look at a negative, I don't give a I am who I am, and I'm fine with me. Mine is make good decisions and live in high character so that I can look at myself in the mirror every day. But if you want to judge me because I've got mannerisms and mental habits that I'm not quite as mellow and down-tone as everybody else, cool. I'm trying to accomplish more shit than the average individual. So I am fine with who I am and how I am. And I'm fine with my disciplines. and I'm fine with my determination, and I'm fine with my drive, and I know that it's not normal, and I know that it's not average, but I don't subscribe to normal or average. So I'm like, I'm fine with me.
I'm fine with me too.
Yes, you are. Yes, right down to if I try and push her to move faster, she will be a shit and she will just move slower. Like that is the Rebecca right there. Yeah, exactly. See her, yeah, because if she thinks that you're trying to rush her and she doesn't want to be rushed, she will just go that much slower just to piss you off.
Maybe I should start.
No, do not. No. Because you have your own.
Some tips,
no,
Matt.
you have
I
your.
really can.
That is not fair. You have your own issues because she doesn't exaggerate the way you do. So you have your own. Okay.
If I just take my time.
No. That's what I was about to say. So no, because I don't want to. I ain't trying to get you to slow down. I need you to. Hopefully you got your question, but there'll probably be some exaggeration in it. But yeah. All right.
This seemed like a pretty good one. So
yeah,
you're gonna say something?
No. I'm waiting on you.
This seems like a lot of small businesses are gonna like this podcast. So with cost of everything going up, how do you negotiate with your distributors? Overpricing, obviously.
I'm going to give you historically how I've negotiated with my distributors, because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not negotiating with my distributors right now. There is no negotiation to be had with your distributors right now when you're dealing with hyperinflation and massive breaking in your supply chain, because basically they will look at you and be like, I don't have fucking time for this. And do you want your product or not? Because I'm running my dick off just trying to source and get you your product. And if you want to argue with me about price, I'm going to move on to somebody else that is just more concerned with literally having product in their actual stores. Even after 17 years where I'm like, you know what, I've seen so many things that I want to be like, this is just another one of those. No, in 17 years, I've never seen the supply chain break like this, and I have never seen hyper out of control inflation like this. I have my, in particular, opinions about what has caused this hyperinflation and what has caused a lot of this bullshit with supply chains breaking, but I don't have control of that.
Yeah,
no. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's like you don't have control of shit, but you either want your doors open and you want to be in business and you're going to figure out how to. I've long said, system sucks, work it anyway. So it's not when it's all said and done, I'm like, it is what it is. I don't have control of the inflation. I don't have control of the supply chain. All I have control of is the amount of the distributors that I work with and the links that I'm willing to go to make sure that I have product. So in the early days, I will say that like if you are looking to save money when it comes to your distributors, you have two things that you have to look at. One of them is your buying power. So it's about what you want in the overall, because the other thing is that you can enlist yourself and get involved in consortments where you add your small buying power to that consortment's buying power, and you're able to leverage the bigger buying power of that consortment in general. But I didn't want to do that, because when I started, the day one of starting Coffee Junkies, I had a national vision. I was going to grow my brands into a national brand. So I knew that I wanted to deal directly with my distributors and directly with my manufacturers, which also meant that I was going to pay a higher price up front because I was a small fish. I didn't when we very first opened our doors, I was struggling to put together a $250 truck. Now the distributors have got, what is it? Some of them are like $500, some of them are like $750, $1,000.
At least $1,000 now. Just
to actually qualify for a truck order. Well, shit, our trucks are $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a pop. So we don't struggle on hitting the minimums anymore, but that's not the point. They flat told me, if you're just struggling to put together a truck order, you ain't big enough to even talk to us about pricing. But I also knew that my negotiating, that's one of the better things that came out of my 3 years as a union rep. I learned to negotiate well. I read many books on negotiating. So I didn't want to be in a consortment where they were like, hey, congratulations, you're saving money. Here's what your price is. I'm like, well, shit, that's why I got into the union to begin with. I wanted to be involved in the negotiation. If you go be a part of a consortment, you might achieve a lower price up front, but you're still not involved in the negotiation. I saw what I was trying to do, and I wanted to deal with the manufacturers and distributors because I wanted to negotiate my own rates. And when we got 10 years down the road, and these consortments are nipping at my heels, I'm like, great, this is the price that I've negotiated. They're like, oh, well, we can't do that. Yeah, I know you can't do that. And you could have beat that and had some type of sales pitch with me 5 years ago, but I'm playing the long game. This is a marathon. I wanted to negotiate my own terms with my distributors. That said, I drank the Kool-Aid with my main distributor. Like, the sales rep was so good and so good at building relationships, and he drank the Kool-Aid of his own company, and it was about the relationship. And so I didn't go out of my way to try and develop relationships with other distributors. Well, then Bean Counters got involved, and after 25 years, they dropped him. And then all of a sudden I realized, that like the relationship doesn't mean shit. Like, this is a commoditized product. You can get this from any distributor. And I caught him speeding. And when I say I caught him speeding, like, when you're buying hundreds of items, it's very easy for you to you can't pay attention to every line item, but they're in the business of distribution. They know those line items, and they know the ones that they can just slide it in and make those cases an extra couple bucks. And you know what? You just won't know. Well, that's the point. You want to deal with a consortment, you don't have to worry about that. But I'm trying to drive my cost of sale lower than what I can get in a consortment, which means you do have to be diligent about that stuff. And you do have to talk to other distributors. And once you've got some buying power, you do have to throw your weight around and keep them honest in general. So I developed relationships with other distributors. And I've always had my major, because part of my major was I wanted rebates. I mean, like, if I'm going to get this buying power, not only do I want a better price than everybody else, I also want a rebate. And that's part of the negotiation. When you get to the point where you've got that kind of buying power, okay, then you can start throwing your weight around and you can start expecting those things. But if you always keep a secondary, like, I have a secondary distributor that can give me everything that my main distributor can give me. One, I'm always able to price compare between the two. Two, when we hit this pandemic and supply chain started to break, well, these two distributors, their supply chain, they went different routes for the same type of products. So likelihood is when one of them was not able to source, the other one was able to source. What I lost control of in the mix of all of this was pricing power, because it very much in the middle of this BS literally came down to, hey, do you want it or not? And at the end of the day, it's always about the end customer and making sure that you're not telling your customer no, or at least exhausting all efforts to not say no. But in a normal operating environment, you have to track all of your costs on every item down to the ounce, and you have got to know what the competition is selling for. And a lot of the distributors will try and give you all of their sales pitch garbage. Tell them to shove that shit up their You look at each individual line item and you price shop and you keep them honest and you tell them, your relationship, this is a commoditized product. You have a level of quality that you're looking to achieve, and all things being equal on quality, this just comes down to price. Do you want my business or not? When you have achieved a certain level of buying power, you can then negotiate for better prices. If your business is growing, once you are achieving those better prices, you are getting more money to the bottom line. If you can get that more money to the bottom line, then you are growing your business. Well, if you're growing your business, you then have the next level of saying, great, you're giving me the best price, but I don't feel appreciated. I want a rebate. And most all distributors have a way of giving you a rebate. They have a way of giving you some of your money back quarterly, semi-annually, annually. Sometimes, depending on the product that you're dealing with, the manufacturer that they are dealing with, there are manufacturer rebates that, again, if you have the buying power, those manufacturers want to get in the middle of that and make sure that even if you change up distributors, because one distributor, all of these distributors are distributing from the same manufacturer, the manufacturer will want a direct relationship with you because you are buying product from them. So again, you can ask them for manufacturer rebates. These are ways that you're able to keep pushing to drive your price down and to keep your sales rep and to keep your distributors honest. Because even that, like my sales reps always had a desire to give me the best price, and they would quote unquote lock in the pricing. But they're dealing with dozens of customers. They're not tracking line items. So when somebody on the back end of the distributor works something into the program to up by percentages on certain line items that you're not apt to pay attention to, they're still in the backside screwing you. And I promise you, there is software involved and there are programs written that they actively look to do that. They will guarantee you a price today, but 30 days from now, check that price. Likelihood is it's not the same price. Sometimes, depending on your product, they will end up saying, oh, well, it's affected by commodity markets. I'm not going to disagree that I've watched my milk fluctuate, watched eggs fluctuate. I've watched sugar, flour, all of these proteins, cheese, all of these really do trade on the commodity markets. And there is a little bit of price fluctuation, but I also take the attitude with them. That's your risk. I'm not a distributor. I'm an end user serving to an end user. So I don't want to hear your fucking sob stories about the commodity markets. You have to range that. You guaranteed me a price and argue with them about it. Now, I had the podcast with Brian where it was like, I'm not going to deny that there is something good out of developing relationships with your sales rep, because your sales rep is making stops and they're talking to other businesses. So if you take the time to chew on the ear of your sales rep, you can always keep a good temperature gauge for what's going on in the market, what's looking on the horizon. I'm not saying that you should be absolutely brutal with your sales reps or with your distributors, but you should be unapologetic. And when they give you this, oh, we're building a relationship, you just get very matter of fact and be like, fuck you, this is a commoditized product. I want the best price. As long as you're going to talk to me about the best price, then we can talk about the relationship. But when we're talking about commoditized products, relationships be damned, it's about price. Because the food and beverage industry is a penny's game. And if you're not talking about the best price first, you're not doing yourself any good service. You're doing yourself a disservice by not price checking up against other distributors, by not having a smaller relationship with another distributor to actually keep things going, to make sure that you're keeping them honest. And that's unapologetic. And I'm going to be honest, my distributors like dealing with me, because they know I'm not like, if I say something, they know that they can expect it. Like I don't BS. They know that when they walk in the door, like this is how this guy is, but at least we know he's going to be straight with us. I don't try and dance around. If I make a commitment, I follow through with the commitment. I don't, I have to. No, I'm very straight and very matter of fact with them. And generally speaking, they respect it. But they also don't waste my time with their sales tactics because they know I ain't got time for that shit. So it's, in my opinion, the most healthy relationship possible. They walk in the door knowing better be competitive on your pricing because this dude is not going to fuck around. He's not going to let you blow smoke up his ass. Price is first. We get price out of the way. Now let's talk about a relationship because you know I'm all about talking to people. But when it comes to where are you going to buy your flour and where are you going to buy your sugar, the relationship does not have dick to do with it. Price is the bottom line, because every dollar that you pay more when you could have got it from somebody else, okay, well, either your bank account has nothing in it or you have to pass that extra cost on to your customer. And it sucks to have to raise prices on your customers. But in this hyperinflation where I know I don't have the ability to talk to distributors about pricing. Prices have had to go up because I know that it's just not a topic right now. We are literally experiencing hyperinflation and like there's no end in sight. Like I've been bitching for a long time saying you guys are going to keep fucking around and we're going to be looking at $5 loaf of bread. Well, I'm sitting here telling you, I mean, we're bearing down on $5 a gallon gas. You think $5 loaf of bread is not coming? It's fucking coming. I'm selling my most expensive cup of coffee for $5.50. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, both of you know, there's 6 shots of espresso in it. I mean, like, it's a high octane cup of coffee, but they're going to fuck around and it's still going to, and we're going to get to a $10 cup of coffee. And it'll be like, that when you print money and it's backed by nothing, that's hyperinflation. You got the government spending more and more and more, and it's not backed by dick. It's devalued, which is the same way that you have a $100,000 home that all of a sudden now is worth $200,000. Well, the value didn't just change. The value of the dollar changed. That's hyperinflation. Okay, so, I mean, do you feel like that was a
solid answer?
That was a fair answer? Okay, so we're going to get to mine. And I mean, I'm sure Matt's probably going to chime into this. So I made the comment to Matt that in my head, and it's like, because I don't like chasing shiny things, that I was literally entertaining creating a second podcast because I'm like, yes, the podcast is supposed to be built on business in general. But I mean, my brain is obviously just a smidge deeper than that. And I'm like, no, I got some shit I want to say about some other issues. And then I started thinking, well, I don't really need to start another podcast because that podcast truly would be like a once a week dropping an episode. And then I thought, because I already came up with the name of the podcast, and I thought, you know what? I don't have to do the name of the podcast like that. I could just work that into the segment of the Julius Files podcast. So the format was always, day one, Entrepreneurial Chronicles. I want to interview entrepreneurs. I want to interview a lot of small business entrepreneurs because I want to hear their stories, and I'm looking for principles of success both in life and business. And I mean, like, that is the heart of the podcast. It will always be the heart of the podcast. And then I was like, okay, well, like I said, my own 17-year journey, and then the background that comes behind that the Q and JP was like, okay, that's an opportunity to field questions from you guys and from the team, and eventually from viewers or listeners that want to send in their questions. And then, like I said, I got my own perspective for that. But that does not leave room to kind of expand upon shit. So I am injecting a third piece to this platform, and we're going to call it Off the Rails. OTR, Off the Rails. And what is off the rails? Like anything that we want to bring up. And generally speaking, social issues, news headlines. So I'm looking to have a once a week episode that is just like totally off the rails. It can go wherever each one wants it to go, whether you just have a topic that you want to bring up, or more specifically, a headline or a story that is out there in the nation or in the world that you want to bring to that podcast format where we can talk about it. Now, I mean, and again, I have my first headline that we're going to start with, and again with the fun. I'm like, you know what? I'm hoping that there is some fun and some funny, and I'm pretty sure that through all of it that there will be some fun and some funny stuff that will actually come out. But there's some stuff that, I mean, like, this shit bothers me, and there are things that I want to talk about. And an Off the Rails podcast gives me the ability to bring it up and to actually have the ability to talk about it. So here is my teaser for where I'm going to be coming from when it comes to what I would bring to the table on Off the Rails. So the Epic Times put out a headline: House passes 1.5 trillion spending bill with 13 points. I'm sorry. Yeah. 1.5 trillion spending bill with 13.6 billion for Ukraine. Now, when I saw that headline, you would like to say that you would about like shit a brick hearing that. But the simple fact is, in this day and age, it's not shocking. It's appalling. It's garbage. It's ridiculous. But it's not shocking because they spend like a freaking drunken sailor because ain't none of them had to cash anybody's paychecks or been responsible for literally having to make a payroll. So they don't have any problem spending money because they have the ability to, one, either print it or borrow it. And that's where I get into that analogy where I want everybody to understand what's going on here. See, America is the largest corporation in the world. Would you? I mean, because I'm looking for Matt to chime in on this a little bit. And I mean, would you agree that America is the largest corporation in the world?
It's a corrupt corporation, sure.
Okay, no, I'm not going to disagree with that whatsoever. But the thing is that a corporation generally has a president or a CEO that runs it, the president. Then they have, and this is where I get into the analogy. Then they have shareholders, and the shareholders are the people that are looking to profit. And who are the shareholders in a corporation? For us, it's our House of Representatives and our Senate. You would think that the shareholder is supposed to be us, the people, the citizens, but we're not. We're the customer that they suck off of so that they can get rich. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're missing the group of the lobbyists and the people.
No, they're the actual, no. That's the other corporation doing business to ensure that they're getting a little bit, or I say a little bit, getting rich off of the shareholders getting rich, because that seems to be the only people that seem to be getting rich are the large corporations, the lobbyists, and the shareholders, the House of Representatives and the Senate and their good old boys club. And how are they doing it? Well, they're doing it from borrowing money that is on our head or simply printing money and spending it. And how are they doing that? Well, we're the customer. All that debt goes on our head. And that's what kills me, because in a regular corporation, a regular company, if you don't like the way they're running the company, you vote with your dollars. You just stop purchasing off of them. But with the government, you can't. Like, it's not even about, it might be a majority rules on which head of the snake happens to be in power, but we're all stuck doing business with them forever, and we are pawns. It doesn't matter if 50% rules. 100% of us have to pay our taxes. 100% of us have to make good on the debt that those shareholders make promises to. Well, you're spending $1.5 trillion, which is nothing new. They've literally spent trillions of dollars we didn't have. No problem. We'll just print more, which is what has led to massive out of control inflation. And I'm like, so let's be real about this. It does not matter who you vote for, because I will be the first to say, and because of one, let's be clear, I'm independent. If I had to pick where does my philosophy lie? Generally, it's probably going to be somewhere in that libertarian, because my whole thing is like, I agree with the Republicans when they talk about being fiscally conservative. Like, I think that you should be fiscally conservative, especially when you're dealing with somebody else's money. The thing is, they talk that shit, but they don't actually follow through with that shit. Okay, well, I agree with the Democrats that they're supposed to be socially liberal or live and let live. The problem is, they don't live up to that shit either. They are just as, if not more, controlling than the other side. Both of them talk about what they represent. Neither side ever live up to what they say they represent to actually get the votes. And at the end of the day, we are all pawns so that they get richer. And they're doing it by either borrowing or printing, because the House should not be passing no damn $1.5 trillion spending bill. And we should not be giving Ukraine no 13 whatever billion dollars. That's ridiculous. The president of Ukraine put his actual political opponents in jail. It is a dictatorship. Like, it is not a good country to freaking live in. And we are already the largest payer into the United Nations. We got an issue on the other side of the pond. The UN is supposed to be the quote unquote world police. We're already the biggest contributor to that organization. Why in the fuck would we literally write a bill on taxpayer dollars to give a communist dictator nation $13 billion of taxpayer dollars? Like, that shit makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, they're not communists, for one.
You sure?
Pretty sure.
If you have the president that is able to lock up his political opponents, that's a dictatorship. That's communism.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more.
Oh, no, I'm not denying. Hey, it's not all simple. I'm not saying that there's not some complexity.
But I don't think the 13 billion was in money. I think it was in weapons.
So now the American government is in the weapons trade.
Oh, yeah, we've been in the weapons trade for.
No, but you see what I'm saying? That
the drug trade, too.
Yeah, no, I get it. But that's what I said right there. And you wonder, nobody should wonder why these other countries have the disdain for America. We butt our nose into shit that we do not need to be butting our nose into.
If you could make money, we're going to be there.
Okay. I mean, but the thing is I'm just sitting here going, the reality of it, that's like, it's absurd. Like, they're just throwing around $1 trillion. Like, think about that. When I was a kid, I didn't even know what $1 trillion, it was like your brain only went to millions and, well, Mom, what's the next thing above millions? Billions. Ooh, billions. Now today, it's like, man, billions ain't shit. If you ain't talking about trillions, then you don't know. You're not even in the ballpark. Literally, like, they are just spending trillions of dollars. Generally, it seems like every freaking quarter. Like, it's just freaking cotton candy. I'm like, and this is on our head. And this is what affects this generation and the future generations, because our kids will fucking pay $5 for a loaf of bread.
Good thing I don't have kids.
Okay. I mean,
I'm looking out for you.
I mean, I don't, and you know what? Feel free to weigh in on this if you got something to say about it. But I'm like, it kills me that how long are we going to continue to sit here and believe their promises? How long are we going to sit here to continue to believe the MSM? Like, how many times do they have to be caught red-handed lying to you before you're like, enough's enough? This shit's got to stop. Like, the Corona bill, what was it called? The CARES Act, I think it was.
I think that was one of them.
Yeah, like 75% of all of that money left overseas. Like, they dangled a carrot. Hey, we're going to give you a little $600. No problem. We're sending all the money and we're paying off all of those people over there. All of that was printed or borrowed money that was more debt on our heads. But they call it the CARES Act. And somehow that's supposed to make it like, you know what? If there is one group of people that legitimately has mastered marketing, it's government. It's politicians. If you got something you want to bring up, because I mean, like, this is where all opinions can come, but I'm like, I want to go off the rails. I want to be able to talk about this. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've heard some funny ass stories here lately that come across headlines that I'm like, yeah, I'd be willing to talk about that too. There's some interesting things that I see out there, but like, that pisses me off. Like,
does it?
I mean, because I'm like, system sucks, work it anyway. That does not mean it's right. And it's like, when we're going to be talking about 2022 elections, and I'm like, great, two-headed snake. Which side do you think you're going to vote for? That ain't neither one of them seems to want to live up to what they say that they are or what they say that they do. You can't seem to trust the ballots, and I will go down that rabbit hole because I'm like, it's not even about the end result. You can believe or not believe the end result. When you are mass mailing out ballots to unknown voter rolls, you have no respect for the actual sacred legitimacy of voting. So if you can't believe the voting and you can't believe the individuals that are even up there blowing smoke up your ass, what is it that we are supposed to be believing in when it comes to our politicians and our governments other than bend over?
I don't know what you want me to.
You got nothing to add to that?
There's no argument to that. I mean, it's wrong.
Like what I'm saying is wrong?
Yeah.
What's so wrong about it?
I mean, those states have been doing it for a long time. Very, very,
No.
very
That is not true. They have not been mailing out mass ballots to unknown voters and letting them be mailed back in and just accepting them. They have never done that until 2020.
What do you mean? Colorado's been doing it for a long time.
You had to register to actually vote to get your ballot in the mail.
Well, you had to register to.
Yes, you had to physically register to vote to get your ballot in the mail. Not in 2020. In 2020, they were like, "Hey, we think this is a name. We think that might be a just mail out a ballot." That is exactly how it happened. That's already came out in the courts. That is how it happened. You literally had people that were saying that they received a half a dozen ballots to their home address marked to previous residents of that home.
An apartment.
It doesn't matter. It's still, there no attempt to clean up any voter rolls whatsoever. Mass mailing out of ballots leads to mass attempts at fraud.
How many W-2s did we send out to the wrong addresses?
Well, there's several. There's always is because people just
move.
They don't think about.
And they don't update anything.
I need those. And
the only time you update your voter is when you get a new license.
No, the only voter that should be getting a ballot is a voter that actually in the mail is a voter that registers right now to vote.
Well, you don't even have to show your ID to go vote.
Yeah, you do.
You do? I don't.
Well, you do in Indiana. There's plenty of other states that are like, yeah, we'll take your word for it.
You shouldn't need an ID to vote.
Bullshit.
Or if it is, then ID should be free to get. You shouldn't have to pay $50 or whatever it is to get an ID.
I didn't know you had to pay $50 to get an ID.
You got to pay something.
Well, to get your license.
What are you talking about? I mean, I'll give you that. We pay enough in freaking taxes that if you can take in documentation and get and to legitimately obtain an ID, you shouldn't be charged for it. I'll give you that.
Also,
our tax dollars pay. They tax us 7 ways to Sunday in all the different ways. So I'll give you that. But should you have to show an ID that shows that you are an American citizen? It is the most sacred thing that is supposed to be what this country is based on. You should have to, if you have to show a fucking ID to buy alcohol, if you have to have an ID to drive a damn car, the most sacred thing in America is your right to vote in a free country. You should have to show an ID, and any politician talking some stupid shit about voter suppression over having to have an ID, that's a dumb, low IQ politician.
That's just not a fair statement.
Which part?
There are lots of people that don't have the money or the means to go get an ID.
I don't want to hear the means because, again, I'm with you. Shouldn't have to pay for an ID. I'm not going to sit here and no, you should not have to pay for an ID. I'll go with that. Totally go with that.
It also should be a holiday.
And no,
really, it should be on a weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the whole weekend part of it, but I mean, I'm sitting there going, hell, they pass out holidays like they're fucking peanuts. So, yeah, I mean, again.
Peanuts, cotton candy.
I tell you what, that's what... National this and national that and circus. Yeah. So, no, I mean, I'm not going to disagree. Again, won't disagree with you there. maybe everything should shut off. You have to have an ID, but if you have an ID, you also the country shuts down so that everybody can exercise their most sacred right of being an American citizen to actually cast your vote. And then if you do, great, you've exercised your right. And if you don't, you got nothing to bitch about. Fair?
Sure.
Okay. I'm with you. That's I'm not.
Time.
Look, that's what I'm saying. Is that like you're never, and you're never going to box me in. Like anytime that you think, oh, you side with the right, yeah, maybe on that issue, but not on this issue. I'm all the way over to the left on this issue. You will not box me in, huh?
I said I'm in the same boat.
That's what I said. I don't. And again, it's a two-headed snake. Yeah. And I will, maybe we'll bring that up in a future podcast that make sure we're going to close this down today, but we should definitely talk about the two-party system, because I agree generally with the two-party system, because most people aren't looking at what it would mean if you fragmented away from
Fragment it.
Okay, well, I mean, you know what? Okay, then we're here. Let's just go ahead and let's get into that. No, I want you to
fragment it.
Okay. So fragment it, but majority rules. We agree, majority rules.
Yeah.
Okay. So what? Huh?
Who's voting?
What do you mean? Who's voting?
You said majority rules.
No, I mean, the majority votes are going to win. If you fragment it and you're be like, come one, come all, create a party, throw your name in the hat. And majority rules, what's going to happen? You want me to tell you who's going to be the biggest majority?
Evangelicals.
That's what I was about ready to say. The single issue right to life voter is going to be the majority. They will only be the majority by a couple percent. But when they all fragment out, it's going to end up being like the right to choice. There'll be a 10% group. The Democrats will still be a group. Republicans will still be a group, but right to life, that'll be like 21%. And every other group will be 20, 19, 18, 17, and you'll fragment out all the way till you get down to the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.5%.
Well, you'd have to have some type of runoff situation.
You say some type of runoff. It doesn't matter. If majority rules, you're automatically going to have this country ran by people that are in right to life. And
I don't know about that.
I don't disagree with right to life if that is what you believe. I believe that you should practice what you believe. I do not think that you should be able to impose your beliefs on somebody else. In a free country, it's supposed to be live and let live. So I would not want to see this country ran by right to life, because I don't think that it's fair. It's not about, I know, right to life. Like, there are single issue voters out there, and this is a very, very sensitive, strong issue for them. And I'm not trying to offend in any way, shape, or form, because I mean, I got Marsha pregnant, and it was like, hey, we're having babies. I never even thought about abortion, but that's not that was just a decision that me and her made. It wasn't about, we were in a free country and she got pregnant, and it was like, okay, we're having babies. I mean, but that was our decision, our choice, our right to make that choice.
But you had
a choice,
ability to make that
yes, choice. You're exactly right. And that's what I'm saying. And so it's like, I just have to point out that if you got into the biggest single issue voter group and you fragmented off of the two-party system, you would end up with 10 to 15 parties, and the biggest of them would be right to life. And with majority rules, then you would find that they were making the rules, and those same individuals, if they were in power, they also have very strong beliefs about a lot of other shit. The point being, if the right to life people were in charge, okay, well, they vote single issue as a voting, but if they were in charge, they also have deep feelings about how everything else should go. And again, this is where I come back to the live and let live. Like, leave me alone, let me live my life. And as soon as you break away from the two-party system, as soon as you stop forcing all of those factions into a two-party system, then you have massive fragmentation. And I don't think that that is a better system than a two-party system.
But it is, because it still has to get passed.
But
so it would still go to the Senate would be more of your right to life or your choice. So there you'd have the same, roughly same split. In the House, though, you'd have it broke up into all of those smaller groups, which would sway the policy back and forth.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, because my brain can go the other direction to be like, you know what? When I was a kid, I remember when I was trying to understand politics, and I was like, what's this bullshit about gridlock? Can't you motherfuckers just get off your ass and fucking do your job? Now today, I'm like, give me gridlock. Like, fucking
give me the 80s and 90s gridlock
exactly.
back. Yeah.
Because the simple fact is, anytime that they do anything, either they're intent on fucking shit up, or the unintended consequences is that they're fucking shit up. And the reality is that when you look at the government, you're like, man.
But you can guarantee they're fucking it up.
Yes, exactly. One way or another, they're going to find a way to screw it up. One way or the other, they're going to find a way to waste our dollars. One way or the other, they're going to find a way to make promises they shouldn't be making, because they know in that moment, you just need to hear what you want to hear so that they can blow that smoke up your you-know-what, so that they can get their vote, so that they can continue on keeping power. And then, much like a dog, you're training them. I don't have to make good on my promises. I don't have to make good on my word. I just have to tell them what they want to hear till I get the vote. And then once the vote's done and I'm back in power, I can go back on my merry, corrupt way of bending all of them over because I got their vote and I got what I wanted out of them. And I'm just like, when are we going to get sick of that? And when are we actually going to do something about it? Because I'm sitting there going, I turned off the news, but I'm not going to say that out of the several hundred that are up there, there's a dozen of them that are worth keeping.
Well, I mean, Citizens United kind of put the nail in the coffin on that. It ain't coming back.
And I'm
Companies being able to vote with their money is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to pass a bill this year that stopped people in the House and Senate from being involved in the stock market, which absolutely should be a law. You shouldn't be allowed to.
No, it should be blind trust. You are supposed to go there to do the people's work, right. Period.
And then you watch the track record of all of these representatives, and somehow they just always make a damn killing.
No, and that's what I'm saying, is that what happened.
They don't know anything ahead of time.
What happened to literally going to doing the people's work? No, we're going to figure out a way to give Ukraine $13 billion, because that's not the only. That was the headline. If they spend 1.5 trillion, I promise it's going overseas because they're too busy paying people off over there. It's not actually staying here, but they'll package and put it in a nice, pretty bow with the name on it so that people think it's something good, like the CARES Act and the Patriot Act. Yeah, no, I know. That's what, exactly. Wrap it with a nice, pretty title, and yes,
that sounds so great.
Exactly. Okay, that was my teaser for what is to come. That we are going to inject an off the rails segment to this podcast. So again, the Julius Files podcast will still be known for Entrepreneurial Chronicles, and then the Q and JP, the Julius Perspective. And then the off the rails, the OTR. So I do want to say that I mean, we're finally starting to get this podcast off the ground, and we've already done several episodes, and I really want to encourage you to rate the show, comment about the show, share the show. Like, I'm not going to deny, I'm starting to enjoy this, and I want to see it grow, and like, that ain't no different than Coffee Junkies and Pizza Junkies. I left Chrysler because I'm a guy. I build shit. I wanted to see how big I could build something, and I'm putting my heart into this podcast, and I'm like, I want to know, how big can I build the Julius Files podcast? So please share the show, especially if you got something out of it, and leave me some comments. Rate the show. I don't care, good or bad. I'll take it, because I think I take criticism pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I'm not. I mean, I got a little bit of an ego. It can be bruised from time to time. But thank you for listening. Like I said, please share the show, and we will see you next time.